Thanks a lot for that, Ashmit. I believe any session that follows the likes of Mr. Sinha and Drew commenting on what's the latest in the world of mobility will be a tough one to follow, but we'll try to do the best we can. I believe our panelists are here already. We have with us Mr. Virinder Sharma. He's a member technical with the Commission for Air Quality Management. We also have with us Mr. Markus Nilsen Rotevatn, the advisor and project lead at Norwegian EV Association. And also with us is Mr. Dipti Lavya Swain, founder and managing partner at DLS Law Offices. Right, so let's just begin with a quick introduction for all of our panelists here. Beginning with Mr. Virinder Sharma. He's, as we said, the member technical with the CAQM. Has an impressive experience. If you look back at his LinkedIn profile, we're looking at over 30 years of experience that he has. He's worn various hats. He's worked across the ADB, the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office of the UK, with the Himachal Pradesh government, with the Indian government. Now playing a pioneering role with the CAQM, with one of the toughest challenges that he has as far as pollution management is concerned. Mr. Sharma, thank you so much for being a part of this. Look forward to the discussion. Also with us, Mr. Markus Nilsen Rotevatn. I'm hoping I got the name right. Perfect. He represents the Norwegian EV Association, has over 120,000 members, and that's mostly individual vehicle owners. Again, a country that has an impressive track record in terms of EV mobility. Last I checked, nearly 98% of the new vehicle registrations were electric. So a lot that perhaps we can look forward to in terms of insights as to what a roadmap for India may look like in terms of accepting best practices. And with us, of course, Mr. Dipti Lavya Swain. He's the managing partner of DLS Law Offices. He's done extensive work from what I've known in the world, in the sphere of electricity, hydrogen, electric mobility. Also, I remember watching one of your conversations where you mentioned that you were also a part of the team that authored the PLI scheme as well. So a lot of interesting insights is what we're actually looking forward to taking forward. Just to set the context, we're looking at the theme that I've been given is legal pathways for having legal clean transport in India, specifically for Delhi, where we are situated currently. It's a very interesting situation. Just a few weeks, months from now, we'll be dusting off old air purifiers, we'll be buying new ones, and rightly so. Very severe pollution levels here as far as Delhi NCR is concerned. And that is only symptomatic of a much wider situation that prevails across the northern belt. We'll see those headlines. I myself do extensive work in terms of reporting some of these figures, data that highlight the concerns around pollution. And as we deal with such challenges, let's also not forget that the transport sector is again a big contributor. Various studies, including the IIT Kanpur study, which is placed before the Supreme Court, cites the sector as a big contributor. So let's move forward. Let's talk about legal pathways that we can explore in trying to attain the common goals of clean transportation, clean mobility. I'll begin first with you, Dr. Sharma. When we talk of legal pathways, India has had a very interesting journey. We've had a journey which, in part, has been contributed to by the judiciary. We've seen the likes of the NGT, we've seen the likes of the Supreme Court take a leadership role in terms of defining what the pathways could be, giving direction to policymakers, and broadly speaking, also provide a platform for debate between the various stakeholders. What has that journey been like? Can you give us a bird's eye view?
So good morning, and I think coming back to this issue in this particular session, we agree that overall judicial intervention has been one of the central, let's say, driving force, as well as the transportation and air pollution problem, at least in Delhi NCR is concerned, and widely in the country also. One of the issues that has been on the contribution of the transport sector to air quality in this region, and it's been seen ranging from about 18% to about 30%, depending upon the season. It still is a major contributor to what we have as the Delhi air quality, Delhi NCR air quality. And that means that unless we really address the transportation issue, which includes vehicles, fuels, and of course the different segregated type of vehicles that we have, this is something that we really cannot get the mitigation of air quality in the region. Starting back, of course, I can see Anumita here. They were associated, Center for Science and Environment, and others were associated with the whole push towards CNG. And if you look at, the push towards CNG, that was a time when we were facing high sort of lead and sulfur diesel, and that was a time when soot and black carbon was very much prevalent. And Delhi did witness a phase of, I would say, a decade of clean air because of the introduction of CNG vehicles. However, we need to remember that, we are situated in a larger, let's say, the Indo-Gangetic plain, and coming, the winter season, we know that, the dispersion of pollutants is minimum. And in a small area like Delhi NCR, we have had vehicles which are more than, 20 or 30 times in any similar city across the world. And that, brings the challenge. So the sheer number of vehicles now is something that needs to be tackled. And if you look at how the judicial intervention is happening in this area, both the National Green Tribunal and the Supreme Court are actively engaged through different cases in this, which includes, identifying each of the parameters around air pollution and specifically looking at what can be done in the transport sector. And in this, I think, again, I remember the, mention that was made this morning by the Deputy Head of Mission, Arvind, from Norway. Of course, you can look at the demand side and the supply side, but it's also important to look at the ecosystem and the political settlement that we are talking about. And that's really a critical part of ensuring that, whatever has been, number one, legislated, number two, which is, part of the legal and policy mandate, is enforced and implemented on the ground, so that the results, so that linear chain that we want from legislation to legal and policy ramifications or interventions, and then looking at specific issues of enforcement. And result orientation means results towards better air quality is something that we need to work more on. And that would require, across the board, a number of organizations, policymakers, planners, people on the ground, especially the people who are more exposed to the winter and the overall air pollution, becoming, people integral to designing the solution. So I'll stop there, but I think in my next intervention I can be more specific.
I think you've given us a lot of insight. You've laid the pathway for us in terms of how to take this forward. Markus, let me get you in on this. This journey as far as developing legal pathways is concerned, Norway, of course, playing a pioneering role. I just want to get your insights. What has your journey been like in India? A large part of these policy initiatives that we see at some point had a trigger back with the judiciary. Is that an experience that you can also recount back in Norway? How was the policy framework developed there? What led to the impetus being given to EVs?
Yes, absolutely. I have to say, first of all, thank you for inviting me back. I was here last year as well, and with a bit fewer people. So this is obviously something that's becoming more and more interesting, and it's so good to be invited back. I think when it comes to the Norwegian EV journey and whatever legal pathways that have been on that journey, it's impossible to not talk about the European CO2 emission standards. The supply side regulation and the framework has been crucial. But I think also my colleague, or what I could call him, the head of mission, or the deputy head of mission of the embassy, he talked a bit about that, so I'm not going to repeat too much about that. I think there's two good examples on the Norwegian development that has seen kind of two different ways of how the legal instruments can be of use, and also how it's challenging to use that, and where you have to go more political and do policy decisions. The first of them was mentioned by my friend from Oslo as well, is the toll rings in Norway. I represent an organization of the EV owners, and we know after a lot of years of doing surveys of our members that the exemption of toll fees, or after a while the rebate of toll fees in the toll rings in the cities of Norway, has been one of the key reasons for why people are changing to an EV. And what's interesting is to see that there's a lot of talk around the world on zero emission zones, creating zero emission zones in cities. And I think it's a very good idea to do that. I think also the city of Oslo and a lot of cities in Norway has considered that as one of the key ways to do it, but they can't in Norway because we have national regulation stating that we can't do that kind of giving some benefits to some technology and vice versa. So what the cities have done in Oslo is to create differentiated pricing based on pollution. So if you're driving an EV in Norway, until 2019, you could pass for free if you had an EV instead of paying the toll rings. Now it's more or less around 50% payment. So it wasn't possible to do this legally, like with a legal framework and create a zero emission zone. But they have basically made a low emission zone with their toll rings that already existed. And it has actually changed from, I have a daughter, she's 11 years old. When she started in kindergarten 10 years ago, there was several days in Oslo that she had to be inside the whole day, and they couldn't go outside because of air pollution. So it's not just a Delhi problem, it was an Oslo problem as well. Now it doesn't happen anymore. And it's basically because of the change of technology in transportation. Also some other aspects, but that's one of the key aspects. So my point is, you can have challenges with legal decisions that can be solved other ways. But then you also can have challenges with people not wanting to do a change. And in Norway, we had a huge struggle with, for all the people living in housing associations. And I remember last year when I was sitting here, I was talking with some EV drivers here, and they said, we have a big challenge with the board presidents of the housing associations. They won't let us put in charging infrastructure in our parking spaces. And it's kind of like an echo from Norway. And I think one of the things I learned there, the most universal thing in the world is probably grumpy housing association presidents, because we had a lot of them in Norway as well. And it was actually such a big problem that we needed to do something in the law. So we, as an EV association, got a lot of information about this from our members, and we managed to put pressure on the government to say that this needs to be regulated by law, that you have the right to charge. And in 2017, and then later in 2020, it was confirmed in law that every inhabitant in a housing apartment that has a parking spot or has access to parking in the public parking spot of that housing association has the right to charge. You cannot refuse them to build a charging infrastructure, or if it's a common parking spot for the whole housing association, they have to provide charging in that parking spot. So that was kind of a crucial moment where we almost stagnated because we had all these policies and regulation that said people should buy EVs, and people were buying EVs. But suddenly, all of the consumers had changing to a new technology, sitting there without the ability to charge. And I think if there's one thing that EV drivers know is that, or the best benefit of having an EV, is that you don't have to go to the petrol station. You can charge your car when it's already parked. That's the whole concept of why it's better to drive an EV than the other alternatives. So it's two kind of different examples on the pathway that we saw, both some legal instruments that could be used, but also when the legal instruments are lacking the efficiency, you can also do it with policies.
Mr. Swain, let me come to you. Two very interesting examples that Markus has shared. One with respect to tolls, the other one with respect to, I believe, one example that all of us can relate to, grumpy RWAs, resident welfare associations. Let's talk scale here. India, in the last fiscal year, FY25, the total number of new vehicle registrations was north of 25 million. For safety's sake, let's say north of 24 million. These are massive, massive numbers. Let's talk scale. When you talk of using some of these legal pathways, how do you blow them up at scale for a geography like India?
Thank you so much, Ashmit. Great question to start off. I must tell you that currently, as far as my numbers go, right, I think we're contributing, as in the transportation sector is contributing to about 6.2% to the GDP. And with that, in India, this sector is also contributing to 13.3% of the greenhouse emissions. Well, these are astonishing numbers. Trust me, Markus, we will also do a Norway. And Dr. Virinder can support me on that. We're really working on that. We have CAQM and various other bodies, including NGT, working towards that. And while I said these numbers, I must also mention that we've been taking, great strides. Like somebody said, India is a large democratic country and it moves like a white elephant, right? Every step is slow, but when that step is taken, it is a thump on the global, population, not just India. Earlier this month, we saw Supreme Court actually take, a huge decision and almost changed its decision, which was a decade long, where the 15 and 20-year-old petrol and diesel vehicles who were banned in Delhi NCR, down to 10 and 15 years, 5 years reduction. Mind you, it was hurting people, the hard-earned money, and it was also possibly not contributing to pollution as much. And with the recent intervention by the government and various other political activists, we saw that Supreme Court stated that let's check this again. There are various vehicles who are completely fit, okay, perhaps BS6 standards, etc., and these are not contributing to the pollution as much as we thought. So a straightaway ban may not be the answer. Instead, let's grade it scientifically. Let's actually see that whether a vehicle is or not contributing to emission, pollution. And on that basis, let's decide whether or not to ban which vehicle. Age should not be the sole criteria. So why I talked about this example right after the stats I gave is because, even those stats that I mentioned, well, I haven't counted that. It's reported by somebody. But perhaps, this 6% is right, but the 13% which I said contribution to the greenhouse emissions may not be right. Okay, we're taking this data on the basis of the EOL, end of life vehicles numbers, and by the registration numbers. Now, the moment we actually change this and bring about our scientific method, maybe PUC or something else, and we implement that, perhaps the 13% will come down, right? And you will see that we are actually rejigging it. Now, similarly, the courts And legislative bodies are, I think, taking a lot of different types of steps to actually curb pollution. Everybody has been trying to say that, the transport sector, adoption of EVs, all of these are major factors. But I think there are various other factors which are contributing to pollution, not just the vehicles. Second point, before I guess you pause me, I know the time is ticking here. But, the second I wanted all of us to remember is that, we're adopting EVs. 98% in your country, Markus, is the adoption. And, we're also increasing year on year. I think the numbers are 34%, 530,000 the last quarter that we saw adoption of EVs. And this percent YOY is actually increasing every quarter. But mind you, with this speed that we are actually adopting EVs, and Sinha sir and us, from Niti Aayog, me at DLS law offices, we all work towards that 18,000 crore PLI scheme for ACC battery manufacturing and various other schemes. But mind you, we also need to check that we're building all these batteries, using it. What will happen after 10, 15, 20 years when we need to recycle these batteries? Okay. Some of us have started thinking on it, but I think while we are pushing this so much, okay, with our PM e-mobility scheme, the earlier FAME 2, FAME 1 schemes, we must not forget that these batteries made of chemicals which are mined also will contribute to the environment. So while we push EVs, I think we should also be very mindful of recycling these batteries.
Wonderful point. Mr. Sharma, let me get your thoughts on one point that Mr. Swain had raised, which is with respect to the Supreme Court decision. It was a CAQM directive that the Supreme Court has for now said that let's not take any coercive action, and meanwhile we've seen the Delhi government file a review of the original 2018 decision which said that there should be a 10-year cap for diesel vehicles and 15 years for petrol. The question I want to ask is, the formula that seems to be coming from the Delhi government, and that is seemingly seconded by Mr. Swain as well, that the age itself should not be a factor. The Delhi's Environment Minister, Manjinder Singh Sirsa, has said that it should be the number of kilometers traveled and not the age of the vehicle. Basically saying that, look, there could be a commercial vehicle, a cab plying on, let's say, an Uber, that does something like a 5 lakh kilometers over a 15-year tenure, as compared to a private vehicle that probably just does 50,000.
I think let me clarify a few things as far as the end-of-life ban is concerned. That was just mentioned just now. The first thing is that when the Supreme Court and NGT decided that this would be a ban, age-based ban, there was a set of such studies that was done at that time, looking at 2015 and before that, which at that time, because we didn't have a clear system of, any other system of actually identifying vehicles, the arbitrary age-based ban, 10 and 15 years, was instituted. And that's what the NGT and the Supreme Court said, that at this stage, we don't have the system on the ground in terms of, standards, fuel standards, emissions, PUC testing, and this is the time to do it. Similar was, the decision that was done in terms of moving to CNG. Now, of course, as things move on, CAQM as the single body representing, pollution-related, air pollution-related focus, was actually looking at the existing ban, and what we perhaps pushed is that this ban needs to be enforced, because again, earlier I said, you can have these legislative policies and directives, but ultimately it's about enforcement and delivery of results. And what we saw is that despite the so-called ban being there, we still had about 60 lakh of end-of-life vehicles running in Delhi. Now, just turn it around, and let's not call it 60 lakhs. Let's say it's only 6 lakhs. But if you look at it from an emission standard perspective, there are still similar numbers, and in fact the number is about another 20 lakh vehicles clearly demarcated, which are still BS1, BS2, BS3 vehicles running in Delhi with NCR, which should not be running because, not because of the 10 and 15-year ban, but because there is a time limit in terms of fitness for these vehicles, the 15-year time limit that we have under standard motor vehicle registration. So in fact, what CAQM did is only said that because the Supreme Court has got this, and now you've got the ANPR technology, you can identify the vehicles on the ground and link it to the fuel. Of course, one needs to move ahead and see, you know, whether we have a fit-for-purpose PUCC regime. Are we just capturing, are we not? You know, in the current PUC regime, beyond carbon monoxide and hydrocarbons, we are not capturing the PM2.5 and the NOx, which are the real culprits in terms of air quality. So is it fit for purpose to identify vehicles based on PUC? No, there's a big question mark there. Second, do we have the automatic testing centers, adequate automatic testing centers which test the fitness of vehicles on the ground, which allow us to, you know, identify that this vehicle, it can continue beyond that. And these are two big question marks, which of course we know that the court is already addressing this issue based on the Delhi review, and that would decide, you know, how we move from an age-based regime to a fitness or a pollution-based regime. But I also want to point out that a lot of discussion here today also was in terms of, you know, the net zero, climate change and CO2. Of course, there are a lot of decisions that we have seen. It may be climate positive, but it will be air quality negative. Mm-hmm. So we need to, at least CAQM as a regulator, we need to look at it from air quality, which means the air quality parameters of PM 2.5, NOx, SOx and others, which are directly then contributing to the amount of air pollution that is happening. So agree that, you know, we need to move and utilize technology, but we also need to ensure that whatever new regime comes in, there is better enforcement and that is better results capturing to ensure that we are actually doing it for cleaner air for everybody. Thank you.
Interesting thoughts. And just like Mr. Sharma pointed out, that this issue, of course, before the consideration of the Indian Supreme Court, so that, of course, will have the final say. But these are issues, enforceability being one of them, that will become key to that debate. I'm being told that we're completely out of time. I'll just go to all of our panelists for a quick closing comment. Mr. Swain, leading with you. When you talk of court intervention, it was the courts that led to a leapfrogging of emission norms from BS4 to BS6. Is that what's the missing component? Is that the catalyst, the impetus that's needed to now make the jump from BS6 to EVs?
I think it always has been like this in India. I think, you know, the government has the pressure of people and of course, you know, the vote bank, okay? So which is why we've always seen that the Supreme Court or the NGT or the Delhi High Court or any other High Court of any other state taking these, you know, strides. I think I completely welcome it, because when the government is not able to take or do something because of X, Y, Z reason, whatever be it, I think the courts have taken. We've seen NGT take, you know, do all of these types of things, and we also saw that, you know, for the first time, you know, CNG and everything else happened, these bans happened. Now again, the Supreme Court said, you know, we will do this calculation about, you know, the scientific norms. And I have a strong feeling that, you know, even going forward, it is going to be like this, because the government has different problems. And mind you, we must not always keep blaming the government, because there are certain things that the court has inherent powers to do. So it will continue doing that. And I think the other aspects can be, you know, handled by the government, ICCT, etc. Thank you.
Mr. Sharma, your quick final comment. The role of a regulator in shaping some of these pathways, working in conjunction with the judiciary as well?
I think moving forward, we have already identified transport as a crucial sector. Of course, work is happening across all the other multidisciplines which are responsible for air quality in Delhi NCR. And what the plan is that we will segregate it for different vehicles, because we have got a different problem as far as two-wheelers and personal four-wheelers are concerned. There's a different issue as far as three-wheelers and commercial trucks, goods vehicles are concerned. And of course, there is some momentum on the buses side. So each segregated category has to be taken and the intervention planned according to that, whether it's on moving ahead from the age base to fitness base and of course pollution. But again, as I said earlier, I would still say that, you know, enforcement of the legislation and the policy decisions, ensuring that we are getting the results because of that enforcement will be a critical piece for us.
And Markus, coming to you for a quick comment, what would your one suggestion be to Indian policymakers as they go about preparing for the next phase of mobility?
I think, first of all, if presidents of housing associations are universal, I think also the frustration of being late for lunch in the last session is, so I'm trying to be quick. I think you need to regulate or do legal action on issues that's difficult to change otherwise. And I think from our experience and from my experience, that has to do with how the market works. You have to regulate the market from time to time. You have to make sure that the industry, the automobile industry and the producers are regulated so that they will actually do the change. I'm not so sure that I think you should regulate how consumer behaves all the time. I think it's much better, instead of banning the ability to buying a car or driving a car, I think it's better to making sure that the alternative is much better. That's kind of the experience from Norway, and I'm completely aware of we have to have different approaches to different countries and contexts. But I think to have a climate policy, for me it's the climate policy at least, one of the key factors we have seen in Norway is that you need to have it also somewhat popular. You have to have support for the climate policy. If not, it will be taken away. For example, too high prices on the toll rings resulted in a new party in Norway. They called the Toll Party. They created an own party that the only purpose was to remove the toll rings of the cities. And they gained a lot of traction and they got position in a lot of cities. So if you do things too strict for the people, you will have a backlash. So that's kind of why I think it's better, or at least our experience has been that the policies that made it attractive to change to an EV has been better than to force people to change to an EV.
That's such an interesting insight based on a political party based on simple mandate of not having tolls. I'd like.
I think what Markus wants to say is don't get scared by RWAs.
On that note, I'd like to thank all of our panelists, Mr. Swain, Mr. Sharma, Mr. Rotevatn. Thank you so much for being a part of this. I'm also being told that we have to launch a report. I'd like to invite Mr. Amit Bhatt to join us for that.
So just quickly, if Drew, if you also join, and I also request my colleague, co-authors, Murthy and Ashok to join. So this report is about cost analysis of fuel efficient technologies for fuel consumption standard for light commercial vehicle. Broadly, it looks at what level of stringency will drive electrification. So it's an interesting report to look at. Once you tighten the standards, you will drive electrification. At what level it drives electrification. So I will request you please